Commander Sarah
Enemy closing
Chen
in. Shields
stared at the
critical.
navigation
Diverting
display,
power to
her
weapons.
hands gripping the
This
edges
is
of the
it.
console until her knuckles turned white. The red zone stretched across the holographic map like a bleeding wound in space. Dead Zone Theta. Even the name sent shivers through experienced pilots. The Galactic Council had made their decision clear 3 hours ago. Earth's colony ship, the Exodus, along with its sister ships containing 40,000 human souls, would be sent into the dead zone. The official reason was resource allocation. The real reason was fear. Humans had joined the galactic community only 15 years earlier. We were the newcomers, the primitives who still used chemical rockets when we first reached our own moon. The other species tolerated us because Earth had resources they wanted. But when those resources ran dry faster than expected, tolerance turned to hostility. Sarah glanced at the crew around her. Young faces, old faces, all wearing the same expression of quiet terror mixed with determination. They knew what the dead zone meant. It was a region of space where ships disappeared, where communications died, where scanning equipment failed for reasons nobody understood. 17 expeditions had gone in over the past 2 centuries. None had returned. The Galactic Council representative, a towering Krillix with silver scales, had delivered the news with barely concealed satisfaction. His voice echoed in her memory. The colonies you requested are denied. However, we offer an alternative. Dead Zone Theta requires exploration. Your species is expendable. You will go there. If you survive and map the region, you may petition for citizenship again in 20 cycles. 20 cycles. 20 Earth years. And that was if they survived. Lieutenant Marcus Webb approached from the engineering station. He was barely 30 but had the eyes of someone much older. War did that. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion before joining the colonial fleet. Where others saw hopelessness, Marcus saw problems to solve. Commander, the other ships are reporting ready. The Council is transmitting final coordinates. We have 6 hours before the escort pushes us through. Marcus handed her a data pad. His jaw was tight. They are not even giving us full supplies. Medical supplies are at 60%. Food reserves calculated for minimum rations. Sarah took the pad and scanned the numbers. Her stomach twisted. This was not an exploration mission, and this was execution with extra steps. The Council wanted them gone, and if they died in the dead zone, so much the better. No more human questions, no more human demands for equality, no more human innovations that made the older species uncomfortable. She thought about her daughter, Emily, sleeping in the civilian quarters 3 decks below. 8 years old. Emily had never seen Earth. She was born on the journey between stars, raised on stories of a blue world with real sky and real oceans. What kind of future could Sarah give her now? "Open fleet-wide channel," Sarah ordered. Her voice was steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Every captain, every department head, every single person on these ships needs to hear this." The communications officer worked quickly. 40,000 faces appeared on screens throughout the fleet, watching, waiting. Sarah saw families huddled together, engineers standing at their posts, children looking confused while their parents tried to maintain brave faces. "This is Commander Chen speaking to all ships. You know where we are going. You know what they expect. They expect us to die. They expect the dead zone to swallow us whole like it swallowed everyone else. They think humans are weak. They think we will break." Sarah paused, letting her words sink in. They are wrong. A murmur rippled through the crews. Sarah continued. "We are the species that crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. We survived ice ages and plagues. We split the atom and walked on our moon before we even knew aliens existed. We do not break easily. We do not die quietly. If they want to throw us away, then we will become something they never expected. And we will survive. We will adapt. And one day, we will return." The response was not cheering. It was something deeper, a collective hardening of resolve. Sarah saw it in the eyes staring back at her through the screens. Fear remained, but it was now joined by something else. Anger. Determination. The stubborn human refusal to accept defeat. The hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Medical teams redistributed supplies. Engineers double-checked every system. Parents told their children stories to calm them. The elderly wrote messages to record their memories, just in case. Sarah found herself in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Earth was somewhere behind them, a tiny blue dot lost in infinity. The dead zone waited ahead, a darkness that swallowed light itself. She pressed her hand against the cold viewport glass. The footsteps approached. Dr. Amara Okafor joined her at the window. The chief medical officer was from Nigeria, her accent still strong despite decades in space. She had gray streaks in her hair and scars on her hands from field surgery during Earth's water wars. "My grandmother survived 3 famines," Amara said quietly. "She used to tell me that humans are like weeds. You can try to kill us, burn us, poison the ground. But we grow back. Always." She looked at Sarah. "I think the council is about to learn that lesson." Sarah smiled despite everything. "I hope you are right, because what we are about to do, nobody has done before. We are not just exploring. We are going to make the dead zone our home. We have no choice." The final hour arrived too quickly. The council's escort ships took positions around the human fleet. Massive vessels with weapons that could crack planets. The message was clear. Move forward or be destroyed. There was no third option. "Commander Chen, you will proceed to the coordinates immediately. Any deviation will be met with force." The Krillix representative's voice dripped with disdain. "The Council thanks you for your service to galactic exploration. Should you survive, your reports will be most valuable." Sarah did not bother responding. She turned to her crew. "All ships, begin approach. Stay in formation. Whatever happens when we cross that threshold, we face it together." The fleet moved forward as one. 5 colony ships, each carrying 8,000 souls. The Exodus led the way. Behind Sarah, Marcus called out readings. Radiation levels increasing. Gravitational anomalies detected. Communications beginning to distort. On the dead zone's edge appeared on sensors like a wall of static. Reality itself seemed to blur at the boundary. Sarah had read every report, studied every theory. Nobody knew what caused it. Some said it was a weapon from an ancient war. Others claimed it was a natural phenomenon beyond current understanding. A few whispered about something alive in there, something hungry. Emily appeared at the bridge entrance, her small hand clutching a stuffed toy. She should have been in the shelter with the other children. But Sarah understood. Fear made people need family close. "Mommy, are we going to die?" Emily's voice was small but direct. Children had a way of cutting through pretense. Sarah knelt down and pulled her daughter close. "No, baby. We are going to live. We are going to find a way. That is what humans do. We survive." She kissed Emily's forehead. "Now go back to shelter. Miss Patterson is waiting." Emily nodded and ran off, her footsteps echoing in the corridor. Sarah stood, blinking back tears. She could not afford to be a mother right now. She had to be a commander. Crossing the threshold in 10 seconds, Marcus announced. 9, 8, 7. The bridge fell silent except for the countdown. Sarah gripped her chair. Every person on every ship held their breath. This was it. The point of no return. 3, 2, 1. Contact. The universe screamed. That was the only way Sarah could describe it later. Every sensor erupted in chaos. The viewport showed space folding in on itself, colors that should not exist bleeding through reality. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared across all decks. "Hold formation!" Sarah shouted over the noise. "Do not break formation." The other ships appeared and disappeared on sensors, flickering like ghosts. Communications were awash of static. Sarah saw Marcus working frantically, trying to stabilize systems. Emergency power kicked in as main systems failed. Backup after backup came online. Then, as suddenly as it began, the chaos stopped. The alarms went silent. The ship steadied. Sarah looked at the viewports and her breath caught in her throat. The stars were different. Completely different. Constellations she had known her entire life were gone, replaced by alien patterns. More disturbing, the stars themselves looked strange. Some pulsed with colors that made her eyes hurt. Others seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. "Report!" she ordered, her voice hoarse. Marcus looked up from his console, his face pale. "I'd all ships present and accounted for. Minor damage across the fleet. No casualties. But, Commander, the readings make no sense. Gravity is wrong. Time is wrong. Our chronometers are showing different elapsed times. Some say we have been in transit for 3 seconds. Others say 3 hours. Can we go back?" someone asked. Sarah looked at the boundary behind them, or where the boundary should have been. There was nothing there now except more of the strange, impossible space. The dead zone had swallowed them completely. "No," Sarah said quietly. "We are trapped, just like they planned." The next 72 hours were a desperate struggle to understand their new reality. The science teams worked around the clock. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The dead zone was not empty. It was full of structures. The ancient stations orbited dead stars. Derelict ships drifted in the void. Some were familiar designs from the 17 lost expeditions. Others were completely unknown, their origins lost to time. But there was more. The physics here were different. Faster than light travel worked in ways it should not. Energy could be harvested from the strange stars. Materials behaved according to rules that made engineers question everything they thought they knew. Dr. Kenji Yamamoto, the fleet's chief physicist, stood before Sarah with data pads piled in his arms. His eyes were wild with excitement and fear in equal measure. "Commander, you need to see this. This place, it is not natural. Someone built it, or something built it. The laws of physics here are engineered." "Engineered?" Sarah frowned. "What do you mean engineered? I mean..." That Kenji set down the pads and pulled up a holographic display that this entire region of space is artificial. It is a pocket dimension, a bubble in reality. And the rules inside this bubble were designed for specific purposes. Look at this. He pointed to energy readings. "These stars should not be able to sustain fusion. The pressure is wrong, the temperature is wrong. Yet they burn. Someone made them burn." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. If this place was artificial, then it had a purpose. And if it had a purpose, then whatever created it might still be here, watching, waiting. She called another fleet-wide meeting. The 40,000 faces looked even more exhausted than before. 3 days in the dead zone had aged everyone. But Sarah also saw something else. Curiosity, determination. Humans were problem solvers by nature. Give them a mystery and they could not help but try to solve it. "We know 3 things now," Sarah began. 1, we cannot go back. The entrance sealed behind us. 2, this place is artificial. Someone or something created it. 3, the 17 expeditions that came before us are here. Their ships are drifting in this space, which means there might be survivors. There might be answers. She paused, looking at her daughter in the crowd. Emily waved. Sarah waved back. "We have a choice. We can drift here, conserving supplies, waiting to die slowly. Or we can explore. We can salvage those dead ships. We can study this place. We can learn its secrets. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way not just to survive, but to thrive." The vote was unanimous. Humans would do what humans did best. They would adapt. What they would overcome. They would turn this prison into a home. The Galactic Council had abandoned them to die. They would prove the council wrong. Every single day they would prove them wrong. The work began immediately. Salvage teams suited up and headed for the nearest derelict. It was a Krillix science vessel, 300 years old, according to the markings. The teams moved through corridors frozen in time. They found bodies, perfectly preserved in the vacuum. They found logs, scientific equipment, supplies, and they found warnings. The last entry in the captain's log was chilling. We should not have come here. It watches us. It learns from us. It is changing the ship, changing us. We tried to leave, but the way is sealed. If anyone finds this, do not trust the silence. The dead zone is not dead. It is very much alive. And Sarah read the log 3 times. Something alive. Something that watches and learns. She looked out at the twisted stars and felt a chill run down her spine. What had the council sent them into? And more importantly, what would it do to them? The first year in the dead zone taught humanity lessons they would never forget. They learned to harvest energy from the impossible stars. They learned to navigate space where physics changed from sector to sector. They learned to recognize the patterns, the signs that something was watching them. Strange lights in the distance, shadows where no shadows should be, the feeling of being studied. But they also learned to build. Using salvaged materials and new understanding of the altered physics, they constructed stations. Mining operations were established on asteroids that should not exist. Farms were grown using light that defied normal spectral analysis. Children were born in the dead zone, and they were different, sharper, more adaptive. As if the zone itself was changing them at a genetic level. Dr. Okafor documented the changes carefully. The newborns had enhanced neural development. Their eyes processed light differently, allowing them to see deeper into the strange spectrum of dead zone stars. They grew faster, learned faster, adapted faster. Nature or nurture, Okafor wrote in her notes. Or is the dead zone deliberately evolving us into something new? Sarah watched her daughter grow. Emily was 9 now, but she moved like someone older. She understood concepts that should have been beyond her. She saw patterns in the chaos that even the scientists missed. One night, Emily came to Sarah's quarters with a drawing. "Hey, Mommy, look. I drew the person who watches us." Emily held up the paper. The image made Sarah's blood run cold. It was humanoid, but wrong. Too many angles, too many dimensions. Eyes that looked in directions that should not exist. It watches us learn. It is happy we are learning. "How do you know it is happy?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Emily smiled. "Because it told me. It talks to all of us kids. It says we are special. We are the first ones who understand, the first ones who can help it." That night, Sarah did not sleep. Something was happening to them, something fundamental. The dead zone was not just a place, it was a crucible, and humanity was being forged into something new. Whether that was good or bad, she could not say. But one thing was certain. When they emerged, if they would not be the same species that went in. The Galactic Council had wanted to dispose of a problem. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. They had given humanity time, motivation, and an impossible environment to overcome. And humans always found a way. 5 years into their exile, humanity had transformed the dead zone from a prison into a workshop. The 5 colony ships had become the cores of 5 massive stations, each one a hub of industry and research. What started as desperate salvage operations had evolved into sophisticated mining, manufacturing, and scientific installations that would have amazed the Galactic Council. Sarah stood in the observation deck of Station Prime, watching construction drones assemble the newest addition to their growing fleet. And the ship taking shape before her eyes was unlike anything that existed in normal space. Its hull was made from materials that should not be stable, arranged in patterns that defied conventional engineering. But here, in the dead zone, It worked perfectly. Marcus joined her at the viewport. He had been promoted to Chief of Operations 3 years ago. His hair had gray streaks now, but his eyes still held that same determined fire. The builders report we will have 20 ships operational by next month, 40 by year end, each one faster and more powerful than anything the Council has. Sarah nodded slowly. The question is not how many ships we build. The question is what we do with them. We still do not understand everything about this place. We still do not know what is watching us. As if on cue, Dr. Yamamoto's voice came through the communication system. Commander Chen, please report to Research Lab 7 immediately. We have a breakthrough, a major breakthrough. Research Lab 7 was located deep within Station Prime, shielded behind layers of exotic matter that kept the strangest effects of the dead zone at bay. Sarah and Marcus hurried through corridors filled with workers, families, and the children who had known nothing but this strange place their entire lives. Emily was among them, now 13, working alongside other teenagers in the advanced physics program. The lab was chaos. Scientists crowded around holographic displays showing data that made Sarah's head hurt just looking at it. Kenji stood at the center, his face flushed with excitement. He grabbed Sarah's arm the moment she entered. We found it. The source. The intelligence behind the dead zone. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Show me. Kenji pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the dead zone. It is not a creature, not in any biological sense. It is the zone itself. The entire pocket dimension is a single conscious entity. Every star, every anomaly, every strange physical law is part of its structure, its thoughts. He zoomed in on a central region, and this is where it thinks, the core. A collapsed star wrapped in dimensional folds we are only beginning to understand. Marcus stepped closer to the display. So we are living inside a thinking being? We have been mining its body, building stations from its substance? Yes, Kenji said simply. And it has been allowing us to do so, encouraging us even. Every derelict we found, every piece of technology we salvaged, and it was all placed there deliberately. The entity has been teaching us, guiding us to discover the principles we needed to survive here. Sarah's mind raced. Why? What does it want? A new voice spoke from the doorway. Emily entered, followed by a group of other teenagers. All of them had that same sharp, knowing look that marked the dead zone generation. It wants companionship. It has been alone for millions of years. Every species that came before either died or fled. We are the first ones who stayed. The first ones who tried to understand instead of escape. Sarah looked at her daughter. How do you know this? Emily walked to the display and touched it. The image shifted, responding to her in ways it should not have. Because it talks to us, Mom, to all of us who were born here. We can feel it, understand it. It is lonely. It has so much knowledge, so much power, but nobody to share it with. Then humans came, stubborn, curious, refusing to die humans. And for the first time in eons, it had hope. The room fell silent. Sarah struggled to process what this meant. They had not been trapped here by accident. They had been recruited. The dead zone entity had let them in, sealed the door, and then proceeded to reshape them into something that could communicate with it, something that could survive in its reality. Can we leave? Sarah asked quietly. If we wanted to? Could we go? Emily met her mother's eyes. We could always leave. The door was never locked. It was just hidden. The entity wanted to see if we would choose to stay. If we would choose to become something more than what we were. She gestured at the displays, the data, the evidence of 5 years of unprecedented scientific advancement. Look at what we have built, Mom. Look at what we have become. The Council threw us away like garbage. The entity gave us the tools to become gods. Sarah turned to the gathered scientists. Can we verify this? Can we confirm that we can leave? Kenji nodded. We can. The children have been showing us the equations. The path out has always been there. We just needed to learn to see it. He pulled up another display. But Commander, you need to understand what leaving means. Everything we have learned here, all the technology we have developed, it works because the dead zone allows it. In normal space, the laws of physics are different, stricter. Much of what we can do here would be impossible out there. But not all of it, Emily interjected. Now, the entity has taught us principles that work in both realities, hybrid technologies, ships that can function in normal space but carry dead zone enhancements, weapons that should not exist, shields that bend reality itself. We can take enough with us to make the Council regret what they did. Sarah felt a chill. Her daughter was talking about revenge, about war. And the scary part was that Emily was right. Humanity had the power now. 5 years in the dead zone had transformed them from desperate refugees into something the galaxy had never seen. But was that who they wanted to be? I need to address the fleet, Sarah said. Everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to make this choice together. The assembly hall was packed, 40,000 faces, though the number had grown with births and shrunken with deaths. The survivors of the dead zone. Sarah stood before them, looking out at young and old, scientists and laborers, the original colonists and the children who had never known normal space. 5 years ago, we were sent here to die. The Galactic Council deemed us expendable. They expected the dead zone to consume us like it consumed all the others. Sarah paused. They were wrong. We did not die. We thrived. We learned. We built. And now we stand at a crossroads. She explained what they had discovered. The nature of the dead zone. The entity that had guided them. The choice they now faced. Stay here, safe in their pocket dimension, continuing to grow and learn, or return to normal space, bringing with them knowledge and power that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. If we go back, some of our technology will not work. Some of what we have built will fail, but enough will remain to show the Council what happens when you underestimate humanity. Enough to ensure they never try to dispose of another species like they did us. Sarah's voice grew harder. But I will not lead us to war if that is not what you want. This decision belongs to all of us, every single person in this room. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued for staying. The dead zone was safe. The entity was benevolent. Why risk returning to a galaxy that hated them? Others demanded justice. The Council needed to face consequences. Other species needed to know that humanity would not be bullied, cannot be discarded. Dr. Okafor stood and spoke with quiet authority. I am old enough to remember Earth before we left. I remember the wars, the struggles, the mistakes we made as a species. The coming here, being forced to adapt or die, it has made us better, stronger, but it has also made us dangerous. She looked around the room. If we return, we must do so not as conquerors but as teachers. We must show the galaxy what humanity can achieve when pushed to its limits, not through violence, but through example. A young man stood up. His name was David Kim, born in the dead zone, one of the first generation to grow up knowing only this strange reality. With all respect, Doctor, the galaxy will not listen to teachers. It will only respect power. The Council tried to kill us. They will try again if we give them the chance. We need to go back strong enough that they would not dare. The room erupted in argument. Sarah let it continue for a while, then raised her hand for silence. You are both right. We need strength to protect ourselves. But we also need wisdom to use that strength correctly. I propose a middle path. We return, yes. We show the Council what we have become. But we do not seek war. We seek recognition, respect, a place at the table as equals, not subjects. And if they attack us, someone called out. If they try to finish what they started, then Sarah said coldly. "We show them why it was a mistake to forge humanity in fire. We defend ourselves with everything we have learned. Every weapon, every shield, every impossible technology. We make them regret underestimating us." The vote was taken. 78% in favor of returning. 20% wanted to stay. 2% abstained. It was decided. Humanity would leave the dead zone. They would return to the galaxy that abandoned them. And they would do so on their own terms. The preparation took 6 months. Ships were modified to function in normal space. Technologies were adapted, refined, tested. Weapons systems were installed on vessels that had been designed for exploration. Sarah hated that necessity, but she was not naive. The Council had proven themselves capable of attempted genocide. Humanity needed to be ready. Emily spent long hours in meditation chambers, communing with the dead zone entity. Sarah watched through observation windows as her daughter sat perfectly still, surrounded by geometric patterns of light that shifted through colors not found in normal reality. When Emily emerged, she always looked older, wiser, changed. One night, Sarah entered the chamber while Emily was finishing a session. The lights faded slowly, reality reasserting itself. And Emily opened her eyes and smiled at her mother. "It is sad, you know. The entity. It knows we have to go. It understands. But it is still lonely. It was hoping we would stay." Sarah sat beside her daughter. "Maybe we will come back someday, when things are settled, when we have made peace with the galaxy." Emily shook her head. "It does not work that way, Mom. The entity exists outside normal time. To it, we are already gone, already returned, already friends again. It sees all the possible futures at once. That is why it is not worried. It knows that some version of us will always be here." She looked at Sarah with eyes that held depths no 13-year-old should have. Time in the dead zone is not linear. We are learning that too. The concept made Sarah's head hurt. 5 years in this place, and she still struggled with the fundamental nature of it. But Emily and the other children understood instinctively. They had been shaped by it from birth. They were the bridge between human and something beyond human. "Are you afraid?" Sarah asked, "of going out there, into normal space?" Emily considered the question. "A little. It will feel small, constrained, like wearing a tight suit after years of freedom, but also exciting. We have only read about normal space, seen it in recordings. Experiencing it will be strange and wonderful." She squeezed her mother's hand. "Besides, we have each other, our family, our people. As long as we stick together, we can handle anything." The day of departure arrived with little fanfare. 80 ships formed up in neat formations, colony ships converted into carriers, the mining vessels transformed into cruisers, science ships bristling with weapons that bent the very fabric of space. It was an armada born from desperation and forged in impossibility. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Exodus, watching the fleet assemble. Marcus checked and rechecked systems. Kenji monitored the quantum calculations that would guide them out. Dr. Okafor stood ready with medical teams, prepared for any biological effects the transition might cause. Emily sat at a special console, her unique connection to the dead zone entity allowing her to navigate where instruments could not. "All ships report ready," Marcus announced. "We are go for transit. We can leave whenever you give the order." Sarah took a deep breath. 5 years. 5 years of struggle, discovery, transformation. They had entered the dead zone as desperate refugees. They were leaving as something else entirely, something new, something powerful, something the Galactic Council had never imagined possible. "Fleet-wide channel," she ordered. "All ships, this is Commander Chen. 5 years ago, they sent us here to die. Today, we return to show them what humanity becomes when you try to throw us away. We go not as victims, but as victors. Not as refugees, but as pioneers. We have learned things the galaxy has forgotten. We have built things the galaxy thinks impossible, and we will teach them to respect us." She paused, looking at the faces on her bridge. At Marcus, loyal to the end. At Kenji, brilliant and brave. At Dr. Okafor, wise and patient. At Emily, strange and wonderful, and her daughter. "All ships, execute transit. Take us home." Emily's hands moved across her console, the inputting coordinates that existed in more dimensions than 3. The ships began to move, not through space, but through reality itself. The dead zone entity reached out one last time, a farewell that felt like warm sunlight and cold mathematics simultaneously. "Good journey, friends. Return when you are ready." "I will be waiting." The universe twisted. Stars that pulsed with impossible colors gave way to normal stellar radiation. Physics snapped back into familiar patterns. Sensors screamed with data as they adjusted to conventional reality. Sarah gripped her chair as the exodus shuddered through the transition. And then, silence. Blessed, normal silence. The viewports showed stars she recognized, constellations from the charts. Normal, predictable, beautiful reality. They were out. They were free. They were home. "But all ships report successful transition," Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. "0 casualties. All systems functioning. Commander, we did it. We are back." Sarah allowed herself a smile. "Now comes the hard part. Now we find out what the galaxy thinks of what we have become. Navigation. Plot a course. We are going to the Council homeworld. It is time they learned what happens when you abandon humanity in the dark. We do not die. We evolve." The Council homeworld of Krillix Prime hung in space like a jewel, its 3 moons orbiting in perfect synchronization. Grand space stations surrounded the planet, each one a monument to galactic cooperation and unity. At least, that was the official propaganda. In reality, they were fortresses, defense platforms bristling with weapons meant to protect the powerful from the weak. Sarah watched the displays as the human Armada approached. 80 ships moving in perfect formation, not warships by galactic standards, but something else, something new. The Council's defense grid was already activating, sensors screaming warnings about unauthorized vessels entering controlled space. "We are being hailed," the communications officer reported. "Multiple channels. They are demanding we identify ourselves immediately or be destroyed." "Let them sweat for a moment," Sarah said. She wanted the Council to feel a fraction of the fear humanity had felt 5 years ago. "Then open a channel. All frequencies. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this." The channel opened. Sarah stood, straightening her uniform. It was not the same uniform she had worn 5 years ago. This one was made from materials discovered in the dead zone, woven with patterns that seemed to shift when not looked at directly. A symbol of everything they had become. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Fleet. 5 years ago, you sent 40,000 of my people into Dead Zone Theta. You called it an exploration mission. We called it what it really was, murder. You expected us to die quietly. You were wrong." The response came quickly, angry, frightened Krillix voices demanding explanations. How had they survived? What were they doing here? This was an act of war. Sarah let them rage for a moment before speaking again. "We are not here for war. We are here for recognition. You tried to dispose of us. Instead, you gave us the greatest gift imaginable. You gave us adversity. You gave us the dead zone. And in that impossible place, we learned, we adapted, we evolved. And we return now to claim our place in the galaxy, not as subjects begging for scraps, as equals demanding respect." The Council's grand warships were moving now, taking up defensive positions. Hundreds of vessels, each one built over decades, each one representing the finest military technology the galaxy could produce. They surrounded the human fleet like predators, circling prey. But Sarah was not afraid. She had seen what her ships could do. "Stand down immediately," the Council military commander ordered. "You are outnumbered 50-1. You will surrender your vessels and submit to quarantine while we determine if you pose a biological threat. Failure to comply will result in your destruction." Sarah looked at Marcus. He nodded grimly. The fleet was ready. Defensive systems powered up, not to attack, but to prove a point. She had hoped it would not come to this, but the Council only understood strength. "You have 10 seconds to comply," the commander repeated. 10, 9, 8. "Activate shields," Sarah ordered quietly. "Full spectrum. Let us show them what dead zone technology can do." The human ships shimmered. Reality around them bent. Sensors across the Council fleet went haywire as the shields activated. They were not normal energy barriers. They were folds in space itself, pocket dimensions wrapped around each vessel. Weapons fire would not just be blocked, it would be sent somewhere else entirely. 3, 2, 1, fire. The space around Krillix Prime lit up with weapons fire, plasma beams, kinetic rounds, missile swarms, everything the Council military could throw at the human fleet. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon. It all vanished into the shield, swallowed by dimensional rifts, redirected into empty spacelight years away. The human fleet sat untouched in the center of the storm. Not a scratch. Not a flicker in their shields. Impossible. Utterly impossible by every law of physics the Council understood. The weapons fire ceased. Stunned silence filled the communication channels. Sarah let the silence stretch. Let them understand what they were facing. Then she spoke again. "As I said, we are not here for war. But if you insist on treating us as enemies, you will learn a very painful lesson. The dead zone taught us things you cannot imagine. This is a demonstration, a warning. Do not push us." Emily approached Sarah's command chair. She wore the uniform of a science officer, though her rank was theoretical. The dead zone children had knowledge that surpassed formal education. "Mom, they are terrified. I can feel it. Their neural patterns are spiking with fear, but also anger, pride. They do not know whether to attack again or run." "Can you communicate with them?" Sarah asked. "Show them we mean what we say about peace?" Emily nodded and closed her eyes. Her consciousness expanded, touching the minds of everyone in the system. It was an ability the Dead Zone had given her generation, empathy on a quantum level. She projected calm, reason, hope, images of cooperation rather than conflict, of what humanity could offer the galaxy instead of threaten. Across the Council fleet, commanders felt something impossible, a presence in their minds, not controlling, not invasive, but present, showing them possibilities. Many recoiled in fear. Some, and the wiser ones, listened. They saw what Emily showed them. A future where humanity's dead zone knowledge lifted all species, advanced medicine, new forms of energy, technologies that could solve problems the galaxy had struggled with for millennia. But they also saw the alternative. Humanity pushed to violence, ships that could appear and disappear at will, weapons that rewrote physics, an enemy that could not be fought with conventional means, an enemy born from the Council's own cruelty. Emily opened her eyes and swayed. Sarah caught her daughter's arm. Easy. That was a lot of minds to touch. "I showed them truth," Emily said weakly. "Now they have to choose what to do with it." The Council chambers on Krillix Prime were in chaos. Representatives from 300 species argued, shouted, demanded action. The Krillix Council leader, by ancient and scarred from a dozen wars, finally called for order. His voice carried the weight of authority built over 2 centuries. "Silence. We face a crisis unlike any in galactic history. The humans have returned. They possess technology we cannot explain. They demonstrate abilities we thought impossible, and they demand recognition. The question before us is simple. Do we fight or do we negotiate? A Vexian representative stood, her crystalline form refracting light. We sent them to die. We broke every principle of the Council. We committed genocide and called it exploration. If we fight now, we prove ourselves monsters. If we negotiate, we admit our crime. Either path is shameful, then we choose the path that leads to survival, a Theran delegate said. His species had fought the humans during first contact, and they had learned to respect human tenacity. These are not the frightened refugees we expelled. They are something new, something dangerous, but also something potentially valuable. Their knowledge could advance every species here. If we are wise, we turn this crisis into opportunity. Debate raged for hours. Meanwhile, the human fleet waited patiently in orbit. No threats, no demands, just presence. A reminder that they existed and could not be ignored. Sarah received regular reports on the Council's discussions. Some delegates argued for immediate attack, others for quarantine. But slowly, gradually, the voices calling for negotiation grew stronger. Dr. Okafor joined Sarah on the bridge. The medical officer had been monitoring biological data from the fleet. Our people are adapting well to normal space. Some discomfort. Nothing serious. But the children are struggling more than expected. Their neural structures developed in the dead zone environment. This feels restrictive to them. Sarah glanced at Emily, who sat quietly at her station, eyes closed in meditation. Can they adjust? They will have to, Okafor said. But it highlights our problem. We are caught between two realities now. We can survive in normal space, but we were forged in the dead zone. Part of us will always belong there. She paused. Sarah, have you thought about what happens after this? If the Council accepts us, do we stay? Do we become part of this galaxy again? I do not know, Sarah admitted. I came here to prove a point, to show them we survived, but I did not think much beyond that. What do we want? Do we want citizenship in a society that tried to kill us? Do we want revenge? Do we want something else entirely? The communication systems chirped. Incoming message from the Council. They request a meeting, face to face. You, two advisors of your choosing, to meet with the full Council Assembly. They guarantee safe passage and diplomatic immunity. Sarah looked at Marcus. He shrugged. Could be a trap. Could be genuine. Either way, we came here for this. To make them see us as equals. Cannot do that hiding in orbit. Accept the invitation, Sarah ordered. I will take Marcus and Dr. Okafor. Emily stays here in command. If anything happens to us, she knows what to do. Emily opened her eyes. Mom, they are not going to attack you. I can feel the shift in their collective consciousness. Fear is giving way to curiosity. They want to understand us, to learn from us. Some even feel guilt for what they did. Guilt is good, Sarah said. It means they have a conscience. Maybe there is hope for this galaxy after all. The shuttle ride to the surface was tense. Sarah, Marcus, and Dr. Okafor sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Through the viewport, Krillix Prime grew larger. Cities sprawled across continents. Oceans sparkled in the light of the system's sun. It was beautiful. A paradise built on the backs of countless species who had joined the Council seeking protection and prosperity. How many others did they try to eliminate? Sarah wondered aloud. How many species did they throw into the dead zone before us? How many did not survive? Marcus checked his data pad. Records show 17 expeditions into Dead Zone Theta over 200 years. Most were exploration missions with volunteers, but at least 5 were like ours. Unwanted populations. Troublesome species. Political prisoners on a grand scale. We are the first to come back. Then we speak for all of them, Dr. Okafor said firmly. Every species the Council tried to erase. We are their voice now. The Council chambers were even more impressive in person. A massive dome that seemed to hold a piece of space itself, stars visible through the transparent ceiling. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in concentric circles, all facing the central platform where Sarah and her companions stood. The air hummed with translation fields, converting speech into forms each species could understand. The Krillix Council leader spoke first. Commander Chen. You stand before the Galactic Council accused of illegal entry into controlled space, threatening behavior, and violation of quarantine protocols. How do you answer these charges? Sarah stepped forward. Her voice was calm but carried to every corner of the chamber. I answer that you have no authority to bring charges. 5 years ago, you expelled humanity from the galactic community. You sent us to die. You relinquished any claim to judge us. We are not citizens of your council. We are survivors of your attempted genocide. And we have returned not to beg forgiveness, but to demand justice. Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. The Krillix leader's scales darkened with anger. You overreach, human. The dead zone assignment was legal under council law. You agreed to explore in exchange for future citizenship consideration. We agreed under duress, Marcus interjected. You gave us no real choice, exile or death. Those were our options. That is not agreement, and that is coercion. Dr. Okafor produced a data crystal and held it up. We have evidence, logs from the 17 previous expeditions into Dead Zone Theta. 12 of them were like us, unwanted, expendable. You have been using the Dead Zone as an execution chamber for 2 centuries. How many thousands have died to maintain your illusion of unity? The chamber erupted. Some representatives shouted denials. Others demanded to see the evidence. A few sat in stunned silence, perhaps learning for the first time what their council did in the shadows. Sarah waited for the chaos to die down before speaking again. We could destroy you. Our technology is beyond yours. Our ships are untouchable by your weapons. Our people have abilities you cannot comprehend. We could take this galaxy by force, and none could stop us. Sarah's voice hardened. But we will not, because that would make us what you feared. Monsters, conquerors. Instead, we offer you a choice. Accept us as equals. Grant humanity full council membership with all rights and protections. Work with us to explore the Dead Zone properly, to learn its secrets for the benefit of all species. Or we leave. We return to the Dead Zone and close the door behind us, and you will never see us again. Your choice. The Vexian representative stood. Her crystalline voice rang clear. I speak for the Vexian Alliance when I say we support humanity's petition. What was done to them was wrong, criminal. We have a chance to make it right, to turn tragedy into progress. I vote yes. Other voices joined. The Therans, remembering their own struggles for recognition. The Mindari, whose philosophy valued survival and adaptation above all. The smaller species who had felt the council's disdain. One by one, representatives stood and voiced support. Not all. Some remained opposed, fearful of human power. But the tide was turning. The vote was called. 300 species, each given equal voice. The count climbed. Sarah held her breath. This was it. Everything they had fought for came down to this moment. The numbers ticked upward, 50%, 60, 70. When it stopped, the total was 73% in favor. Humanity was granted full council membership. Sarah felt tears threatening but held them back. They had done it. Not through violence, not through revenge. Through showing what humanity could be when pushed to the edge and choosing to step back. The Krillix leader rose slowly. His expression was unreadable. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Commander Chen. May your species bring wisdom to match their power. The return to the fleet was quieter than the journey down. Sarah, Marcus, and Okafor sat in contemplative silence. They had won. But victory felt strange. Hollow in some ways. They had acceptance, but at what cost? 5 years of suffering. 40,000 people transformed by necessity. Children who would never know what it meant to be simply human. Emily was waiting when they docked. She hugged her mother fiercely. I felt it. I felt the shift across the entire planet. Hope replacing fear. It was beautiful, Mom. You did it. We did it together, Sarah corrected. All of us. Every person who survived the dead zone. Every scientist who refused to give up. Every parent who told their children stories of Earth so they would not forget where we came from. This victory belongs to humanity. In all of humanity, the next weeks were a whirlwind of negotiations. Humanity was granted systems for colonization. Trade agreements were established. Most importantly, the dead zone was declared a protected research area. Teams from multiple species would explore it properly, with human guides who understood its nature. The knowledge gained would be shared freely among all council members. But not all humans stayed in normal space. 20%, including most of the dead zone children, chose to return. The entity was waiting for them, welcoming them home. They established a permanent settlement there, a bridge between realities. Human researchers rotated through, learning and teaching. The dead zone became humanity's greatest asset and deepest mystery. Emily was among those who returned. Sarah stood at the viewport, now watching her daughter's ship disappear into the dimensional fold. It hurt. But she understood. Emily belonged to both worlds now. Normal space was too small for what she had become, too constrained. In the dead zone, she could be fully herself. Marcus joined Sarah at the window. You okay? No, but I will be. Sarah wiped her eyes. She made her choice. I have to respect that. Besides, she is not gone, just living somewhere I cannot easily visit. We will see each other again. Years passed. Humanity flourished in normal space. Colonies thrived. Human innovations revolutionized medicine, energy production, space travel. The technologies learned in the dead zone, adapted for normal physics, lifted the entire galaxy. Other species began to see humanity not as newcomers, but as valuable partners, equals, friends, even. The council itself changed. That reforms were passed preventing any species from being exiled or disposed of. The dead zone revelation had shaken the government to its core. Those responsible for the previous genocides faced trial. Some were punished, others fled. But the wounds began to heal, slowly, painfully, but steadily. Sarah eventually retired from command. She had done what she set out to do. Humanity was safe, respected, thriving. She settled on one of the new colonies, a world they named Hope. It seemed appropriate. On quiet evenings, she would sit and look at the stars, wondering which ones were real and which were reflections from the dead zone bleeding through reality. Emily visited once a year, emerging from the dimensional fold for brief stays. Each time she seemed more changed, more ethereal, but also more herself. She would tell her mother stories of the dead zone, of the entity's vast consciousness, of the humans who lived there now, evolved beyond what baseline humanity could comprehend. They were happy. They were home. One evening, 20 years after their return, Emily sat with her mother watching the sunset. Sarah was old now, her hair white, her hands wrinkled, but her eyes still held that same fire. That same refusal to give up that had kept humanity alive in their darkest hour. Do you regret it? Emily asked. The dead zone, everything that happened? Sarah considered the question carefully. Parts of it, yes. The fear, the suffering, watching people die, losing you to a place I cannot follow. Those things I regret deeply. She paused. But the outcome? No. We were given a terrible gift, and we used it to become something greater. Not just humanity. The entire galaxy is better because we survived. Because we chose cooperation over revenge. Progress over destruction. Emily nodded. The entity says hello, by the way. It remembers you fondly. Says you were the first one to see it as a teacher instead of a prison. Tell it. I said thank you, Sarah replied. For everything. for keeping us alive, for showing us what we could become, for being patient with a bunch of stubborn humans who did not know any better. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, mother and daughter, one rooted in normal space, one belonging to the impossible, both human, both survivors, both proof that when you try to break humanity, we do not shatter, we adapt, we overcome, we become something new. The council had tried to dispose of a problem, yet they had tried to eliminate an inconvenient species. They had tried to erase humanity from the galaxy. Instead, they had forged us into something unprecedented, a species that lived in two realities, that understood physics on levels nobody else could, that brought knowledge and power to the galactic community. They had abandoned us in the dead zone to die. We returned with an armada, not for conquest, for recognition, for justice, for the simple right to exist and thrive. And in doing so, we showed the galaxy what it truly meant to be human: stubborn, resilient, curious, forgiving when we could be, fierce when we must be, forever refusing to accept that anything is impossible. Sarah closed her eyes and smiled. 40,000 souls had gone into the dead zone. 40,000 had come out, changed, evolved, but alive. Yeah, and that made all the difference. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. They had learned their lesson well. When you throw humans into the dark and expect them to die, you better be prepared for what comes crawling back out. Because it will not be broken. It will be transformed, stronger, smarter, more dangerous than you ever imagined. That is the human way. We do not die, we evolve. And